Okay, probably one of the last two videos in my current rural paradise before I move at the end of the month. I'm sure I'm really going to miss taking a walk to talk about video games and looking down to see 4 mosquitoes on my calf. Okay. I played Triangle Strategy to mostly offline to have a game to make sure I had enough stuff on YouTube for when I went on vacation. I think tactics games, generally speaking, are one of my favorite genres. I guess up there with like immersive sims. I just really like the way that they often set up levels in sort of like the Final Fantasy Tactics Triangle Strategy way, where you have like a polygonal map that rotates a lot, and it kind of feels like a theater play to some degree. Triangle Strategy has been really, really good at making it so they keep reusing the same areas both for story and battles, and they go through it. And hold on, there's Canada geese over here. Boys, looking good. Looking thick. I like that. Okay, sorry. I just really like in tactics games how you have a number of characters who you switch through for different circumstances with like very, very clear niches and roles. That's always something that I like a lot in games. So to kind of put a party together that everyone does one thing or a few things really, really well. I really like that. I don't really like generalists for games like this. I like something that's a little more like get a couple of tanks, get a couple of healers, things like that. I'm a huge fan. And then I was actually oddly surprised by this game. I basically just wanted to scratch the tactic itch. And I'd heard pretty good things about this. This is a game with like literally nobody ever on Twitch. Just not really like a public game. It's more something that people just play. But I was actually extremely surprised by how good this was. It's sort of Game of Thrones like in the story. Very, very intricate. A lot of betrayals, a lot of succession. There is magic and fantasy elements, but what's actually paramount is things that are sort of like realpolitik. Salt and iron and succession and betrayal and economics and logistics. Which sounds boring, but it's actually pretty good. It has one of those circumstances where there's 3 different main endings and then one sort of golden route, and you have a lot of points where you make decisions where nothing really, especially in the second half of the game, nothing really feels like an easy answer. Everything is like an okay, but okay, I guess this is the best call, but everything is downsides, and there's a real sort of moral ambiguity to this, which is surprisingly mature for like a video game story. A horsefly just flew in my mouth. We got a lot of wildlife going on today. I barely stopped that from going down my throat. That was like a quarter second away. I have tears in my eyes now. Okay, what was I saying? I wish I could have done this with the Japanese voice acting, but because I was playing as something that I could sort of record, I just let the English go by, and I guess that's fine. A lot of times it feels like even everyone who's supposed to be like a middle-aged or old character still sounds like they're being voiced by like a 22-year-old or a 27-year-old with a deep gravelly voice or something. There are some really good voice acting things, and like plot-wise, the game is one of those games similar to something else I played recently, where it doesn't like, it's not apologetic about being quite serious. Like it's like pretty. It doesn't try to be too cute or anything like that, or be sort of ironic. It just basically takes itself fairly seriously in being a game with like pretty heavy themes. But I mean, like, I can't expect too much. Like, it's not like I'm reading Cormac McCarthy here. It's still basically like a game for teenagers and mental teenagers, because that's how JRPGs mostly are. I think that I'm still recovering from the horsefly in my throat. The things I like the most about this is that it's outstanding music and a very nice graphical style, and is like well written in a complex way. Like they are pretty economical about using settings and surroundings that you've seen a number of times and to keep kind of going back to it. But the fact that the game is like quite layered, in that you could probably play it, well, what they apparently you can play it 3 to 4 times and get like basically different outcomes, maybe even more, generally speaking. But there's a pretty good amount of replay value, even considering that I got like about 60 hours out of the game. I played it on hard mode. The music is outstanding. I do really like sort of the way that your character can progress over the course of the game to within the last quarter or 20% of the game having like a pretty reliably cool late game fantasy. The game definitely encourages you to have to replay it to some degree on New Game Plus. One, because once you get to New Game Plus, the game's a lot more explicit on how you're going to be able to get the different endings. They start to make the things that were hidden visible so that you can start to see more of the content without necessarily having to follow a guide or something. I'd be pretty open to playing the game again to try to get the like golden route, which is a series of like specific decisions that end up with like some really hard, difficult outcomes, but I guess what's so called like the best ending, I suppose. You pretty much like, I think basically you usually get about 10 people per party per encounter, and if I recall correctly, I was able to, there's 3 ranks of promotion, like basic, recruit, veteran, elite. If I recall correctly, I think 6 of when I played, 6 of or 7 people I was able to promote to the top level, which is pretty light. And there's not a lot of grind options in this game unless you want to replay old battles, which is kind of lame to do. It's one of these games sort of like Suikoden, or actually most tactics games like a Shining Force or something, where it's pretty easy to catch people up who are low level and very hard to over level, which is a nice balanced system. Like you'll get basically 1 level per action if someone's like 10 levels behind the general average of it. So it's easy to keep people up. I want to again say how good I think the music is. It's like symphonic and excellent. There's a wide variety of like aesthetics and styles to the music, to be honest. There's like some songs are extremely deep and epic, and some of them sound a little bit sort of elevator music-y, but the best songs are extremely good, and I like those things a lot. Nice effects on like water and grass. Generally speaking, the sort of Rosellans as essentially like the Egyptian Hebrews is like a funny like underlying story to the entire thing. And I will say that the worst qualities of the game are basically hard mode is the sort of hard mode where yes, the game is pretty well tested and that these encounters are completable. Some of them took me 5 or 6 attempts at the hardest ones. Yeah, sometimes there's probably 1 or 2 battles. One where you get ambushed in the ravine by the guy from Hyzant, and the battle against Minister Lila for my playthrough were like absurdly difficult. The way that they do hard mode in this game is basically to like hugely overtune the amount of damage put out by enemy characters with their combo attacks, the attacks that cost TP, whatever that acronym stands for. And so when you're playing it, like just the amount of damage you're taking in, especially from spellcasters with lightning spells, is just like, this is ridiculous. Like I hate this. So it feels pretty bad, but the encounters are doable, so they have balanced it well. Part of the reason I'm accentuating that they need to, clearly these are well tested because they're completable, but they're well tested. So they're well tested within the context of how they've made the game. And I will say that like my largest criticism of it is this game's AI is dog shit. Like a lot, like absolutely terrible. There's a number of fights which are the most challenging fights where part of the reason why I got through it was like absolutely unexplainable AI behavior. Mostly from the enemies, obviously. A couple of battles where you have people who are in your party who you can't control, they can be like extraordinarily stupid as well. But there's a number of fights that I got through, namely where you fight Erica and Thalas, the twins from Esfrost, on top of the ship when you invade Glenbrook to try to take it back. Or like the only way I got through this battle, on the attempt where I got through the battle, was just that it seems like they've programmed each encounter for enemies to behave in a certain way within the context of that encounter, as opposed to having sort of like general intelligence. And it's really, really bad. Like they actually do totally confusing, stupid things. And a lot of times the most challenging encounters you get through, or at least in my experience, because the AI does not behave intelligently at all or do anything useful. And they'll just run around in circles or have a huge amount of turns where they do nothing. They could have balanced this game in a lot better way if they had actually started with the prospect that the characters like just try to do a good thing and try to make intelligent decisions when they're operating. I think a lot of games, generally speaking, like this is honestly like PlayStation 1 levels of like NPC behavior. It's crazy how bad it is. Um, Generally speaking, sometimes I think games will make things artificially a little bit easier because if the computer just always does the right thing, the game's too difficult. I think this has probably been a factor in other circumstances, but having guys wander around a circle or having someone who like gets a debuff like poison or sleep and then just runs around like a panicked headless chicken for the rest of the game, that's really crazy when that happens. So that's definitely the biggest flaw of it. But this game, despite being like something that not a lot of people know about, was like weirdly good. Honestly, it's really, really, really sharp, well written, layered, nuanced, morally ambiguous, beautiful sounding, quite nice graphics. I'd be interested in playing another playthrough. Maybe I won't, but maybe at some point I would try to do like the Golden Road, the Lito's Golden Path style New Game Plus playthrough. It's definitely recommended if you like this kind of game. If you like tactics games, this is like one of the best ones in a long time. It's one of the ones where a lot of these games get advertised as like, this is the best, oh my god, this is just like FF Tactics or something. But a lot of those games I find often pretty disappointing. So this one does like a nuanced, laborious job of making a good version of these kind of games. Yeah, it's like a well-orchestrated Game of Thrones style story based in a lot of real elements, which is intelligent. Each of your characters perform a great role. I personally liked using, I thought the main character was a little bland in his like role in battle. Like, yeah, he's useful and like he has a lot of damage, but I didn't think that he was like particularly, I didn't think that he had a particularly good role. I didn't think that he did really that much that was like interesting besides like pretty high single target damage. I really liked Eridor, the main tank. He, in about 9 out of 10 battles, he was extremely useful, and when he was useful, he was crazy useful. I used 3 mages, basically. I used the Fire, Ice Mage, and Azana, the Shaman, with, like, basically weather magic, and I thought, like, generally speaking, that was extremely enjoyable. When archers are good, they're extremely good. There's a lot of fights where they don't have a height advantage, where they're sort of middling. I thought that Roland, who's one of the other main characters, and even Maxwell, who you get later on, who are, like, the two sort of, like, lance-wielding sort of longer damage melee characters were oddly useless. Like, they're good, but they're so squishy, and their damage is not that impressive. So the game is sort of balanced, at least in my experience. This is my first time playing the game, and I played it in hard mode. The game is sort of balanced on the fact that you basically have to, like, exploit that your main tank can do a lot of things to become extremely useful. The healer, Gila, is, like, probably the most useful character in the entire game, because she's the only conventional priest-style healer. There's 2 other people who heal, but I never really found them to be terribly useful, honestly. A little bit too niche in the way that you can use them. For example, Medina, who's like a nurse type character who uses healing consumable items at a higher efficiency. This is a game where you're pretty starved for resources the entire time if you want to upgrade people. So to keep a reliable supply of consumable healing items is not really the way I found to play it, because you're just constantly starved to try to actually upgrade your guys. So I didn't use her very much. Generally speaking, you exploit the classes' specialities to make the sort of pure classes like magic users, healers, and tanks to do their job as best as possible. And that's sort of how you get through fights. Overall, really enjoyable. I wouldn't mind playing it again at some point. I would like to play Shining Force 3 now that the version 25 English translation from Shining Force Central is finished. That's always a game I'd always like to play. Maybe Tactics Remake when it comes out. But this is like a very worthy addition to this series. And an overall, like, honestly, quite a good game. Like a 7.5, like borderline 8 out of 10 game for what it is. Very impressive. Okay, bye. This is a funny one because I'm entirely in shambles the entire time. It's pretty disorganized in the structure of it, but I got through most of the points that I wanted to say, except for one, which is that my other main criticism of this game is pacing. It's most games want to teach you the story and get you into it through action, but this game gives you a relatively short tutorial battle followed by I think 90 minutes of dialogue and exposition. It gets better later, but especially in the first third to half of the game, there is a ton of slowdown and just a huge amount of dialogue. But they really iron out these pacing issues by the end, and it's a lot quicker and a lot more satisfying. But outside of like the NPC enemy AI, I'd say my other large criticism was just how abominable the pacing is in the beginning and how dialogue and exposition heavy it was. So enjoy me having my brains absolutely scrambled by a horsefly flying down my throat and me stopping it at the last possible millisecond.